Around 10,000 BC, the Yagals, a tribe facing difficulties in sustaining themselves due to the scarcity of mammoths for hunting, have been sending their hunters farther away from their settlement every day to find food. One night, the hunters bring back a young girl named Evelette who had been clutching onto her deceased mother. The hunters are intrigued by Evelette's unique bright blue eyes. The old mother, the tribe shaman, taps into the spirits to reveal a prophecy that predicts the arrival of four-legged demons on the day when the Yagals embark on their final hunt. As per the prophecy revealed by the old mother, a valiant warrior will emerge from the final hunt and choose Evelette as his companion. Together, they will guide the tribe towards a life free of hunger. However, the chief of the tribe remains skeptical of the prophecy and seeks an alternative solution to feed his people, rather than waiting for the hunt that might take years to happen. Prior to his departure, the chief entrusts his friend Tik-Tik with the sacred white spear and requests him to safeguard his son Blay. Once the chief departs, Blay becomes a target of bullying from other boys who taunt him for being the son of a leader who deserted the tribe. Tik-Tik has to intervene regularly to prevent conflicts and cautions the youngsters against speaking ill of their former chief. Feeling isolated, Blay withdraws into solitude, and Evelette joins him since she can empathize with his struggle, having lost her own people to the four-legged demons. Moved by Evelette's companionship, Blay pledges to never let her feel alone again. As time passes, the two spend an increasing amount of time together, and eventually fall in love. As the final hunt approaches, a young Baku informs Blay that the old mother is certain that the prophecy will come to pass, and everyone anticipates that Karin will win Evelette's affection. As they converse, Evelette interrupts Blay and Baku, using food to lure the young boy away so she can talk to Blay privately. Fearing that Karin may be too skilled to defeat, Evelette suggests they run away together. However, Blay refuses to flee like his father, and assures her that he will emerge victorious in the hunt. Suddenly, Baku announces the arrival of mammoths, and Tik-Tik reminds the hunters that the one who slays a mammoth will claim the white spear and become the new chief. He then leads them towards the field. The hunters cautiously approach the herd of mammoths, and Tik-Tik is the first to locate the leader. He bellows loudly to intimidate the mammoth, and the others follow suit. Startled by the noise, the mammoths start to run away, and the hunters pursue them. One enormous mammoth attempts to escape through a narrow passageway, but the tribe ensnares it with a net. Karin throws his spear at the mammoth, but it misses the mark. Despite their efforts, the mammoth manages to break free from the net, dragging Blay along with it as his hand is caught in the tangle. The hunters are forced to release the net as the mammoth is too powerful, and it continues to run with the net trailing behind it. The net gets entangled in some rocks, but the mammoth charges after Blay as he is still attached to the net. Blay manages to avoid the mammoth's attacks and frees his hand to grab a spear, but his first shot only makes the mammoth more furious. Seeing another spear stuck in the rocks, he runs towards it while the mammoth continues to chase him. As he picks up the spear, the mammoth charges towards him, but it accidentally impales itself on the spear and falls dead on top of Blay. The group rushes to his aid and commends him for successfully hunting down a mammoth single-handedly, a feat that has never been accomplished before. The elderly matriarch presents him with the ivory spear in Evelette's hand. The mammoth is carried away for food, and the tribe rejoices with a festival, but Blay is consumed with remorse as he realizes that the mammoth's death was unintentional. Blay seeks counsel from Tik-Tik, torn between his desire to keep Evelette and his belief that dishonesty is wrong. Tik-Tik reminds him that the Yagal tribe does not attain the ivory spear through deceit. Later that night, Blay informs Evelette that he returned the spear to Tik-Tik, affirming his love for her and their relationship. However, Evelette perceives Blay's surrender of the spear as a sign of giving up on her, causing her to depart. The following day, the Yagal tribe is ambushed by unknown assailants riding four-legged beasts, who are revealed to be horsemen. The invaders take captive the able-bodied individuals to be enslaved, and execute those who resist. Baku takes refuge in a shelter, powerless to intervene as One Eye murders his mother. Blay, tormented by his remorse, falls asleep beyond the confines of the village, but is jolted awake by the clamor of the attack. He rushes to their aid. Despite Blay's eagerness to fight back, Tik-Tik restrains him, recognizing the futility of opposing the invaders. The leader of the horsemen, known as the Warlord, becomes enamored with Evelette's beauty and claims her as his own. Once the marauders depart with a group of new slaves, the survivors endeavor to pick up the pieces of their shattered tribe. Blay resolves to pursue the horsemen, and Tik-Tik and Karin agree to accompany him. Although Baku is initially advised to remain behind due to his youth, he clandestinely joins the trio, disclosing that he has no remaining family. After trekking for a considerable distance, they chance upon a cluster of stones, signifying a prior campfire, and a fragment of Evelette's necklace, confirming their course. However, they are suddenly engulfed by a blizzard, and even the old mother, who trails their spirits, is not immune to the frigid conditions. The hunters endure the storm, but awaken to find that the snow has obliterated all signs of the horseman's trail. As they continue their pursuit, the group traverses for several days and nights, growing increasingly anxious that they may have lost their way. Meanwhile, One-Eye discovers that Evelette has been shedding fragments of her necklace as a means of guiding her rescuers. When she refuses to surrender the trinket, the warlord savagely whips her hands in an attempt to break her resolve. Sometime later, the hunters come upon the site and come across the necklace, besmirched with blood. Delay fears for Evelette's survival, but Baku offers a glimmer of hope, suggesting that perhaps she simply misplaced the necklace. As they continue their pursuit, the group traverses for several days and nights, growing increasingly anxious that they may have lost their way. Meanwhile, One-Eye discovers that Evelette has been shedding fragments of her necklace as a means of guiding her rescuers. When she refuses to surrender the trinket, the warlord savagely whips her hands in an attempt to break her resolve. Sometime later, the hunters come upon the site and come across the necklace, besmirched with blood. Delay fears for Evelette's survival, but Baku offers a glimmer of hope, suggesting that perhaps she simply misplaced the necklace. Suddenly, the group observes birds fleeing from the forest in terror, indicating that the riders have ventured in that direction. The forest is fraught with perilous beasts, and when a cryptic creature seizes one of the riders, Warlord lashes out, urging his captives to hasten their pace. Shortly thereafter, Blay comes across a remnant of the missing rider's armor on the ground, affording him the opportunity to track the trail leading to the rider's encampment. Despite Blay's eagerness to launch an assault, Tik-Tik cautions him that it's an ill-conceived notion since the riders are alert, and they'll be apprehended if they act hastily. Consequently, they must exercise patience. The following morning, One-Eye rouses Evelette from her sleep, attempting to exploit her. Blay intervenes at once, knocking One-Eye out and reuniting with Evelette. However, their reunion is cut short when the horses abruptly become agitated, spooked by something lurking in the woods. Blay departs with Evelette, and while the riders prepare to leave, the warlord realizes that his beloved girl is missing. Blay seizes the opportunity presented by the horses' commotion, and with Evelette's help, they commence the liberation of their people. However, their actions do not go unnoticed, as One-Eye spots them and gives chase. The fugitives encounter Tik-Tik and their companions as they flee, but their elation is short-lived as One-Eye succeeds in apprehending Karin. Out of nowhere, the pursuit is abruptly halted by the onslaught of terror birds. The riders engage in combat with the ferocious birds, while Baku seeks refuge in a tree and Tik-Tik valiantly attempts to defend himself but sustains an injury. The group seeks shelter amidst the trees, and Delay assures Evelette that he will return shortly before bravely venturing out to divert the attention of the birds away from Baku. A new pursuit ensues as the group navigates through the forest, and Delay scales a boulder to strike down a bird hovering above them. Afterwards, he rushes towards a bamboo grove and employs a bamboo rod as a spear to slay another bird. Unbeknownst to him, while he is occupied, the rider sees the opportunity to capture Baku and Evelette. Upon his return, Delay discovers Tik-Tik injured but still breathing. Without hesitation, he fashions a makeshift stretcher to transport Tik-Tik and pursues the captors through the savannah, only pausing for rest and nourishment. During the initial evening, Delay ignites a fire and cauterizes Tik-Tik's wound while expressing remorse for not heeding his advice. Subsequently, Delay ventures out to hunt for sustenance, and in his haste, he stumbles into a concealed pit trap and loses consciousness. Meanwhile, back in the tribe, Old Mother awakens from a premonitory vision of impending doom. That night, a heavy downpour ensues, and the pit gradually fills up with water. Delay awakens to the sound of rainfall and realizes a saber-toothed tiger is trapped with him in the pit. At first, he contemplates slaying the beast, but ultimately, he pities it and chooses to release it while imploring it not to harm him. The tiger approaches Delay and sniffs him before departing without any aggression, thereby alleviating Old Mother's apprehension, and she falls back asleep. Delay clambers out of the pit and reunites with a recovering Tik-Tik. Having heard commotion beyond the hills and glimpsed smoke in the distance, they opt to investigate. The pair encounters a small settlement that had similarly fallen victim to the raiders. Upon locating nourishment, they hungrily begin consuming it, only to be unexpectedly encircled by the armed inhabitants of the settlement. As the situation seems dire, the tiger suddenly appears, causing the tribe to back off. Nakuda then directs Delay's attention to a series of paintings that depict a prophecy about a man who will be able to communicate with the tiger and liberate their people. It becomes clear to Delay that he is the one referred to in the prophecy. Nakuda sends word to the other tribes about the prophecy, but Delay is hesitant to lead them. In an effort to comfort him, Tik-Tik clarifies that his father did not abandon him. Rather, he departed to seek an improved life for their tribe. The decision to pursue his father's aspirations rests solely on Blay. The following day, the messenger returns with news that the riders have also attacked neighboring tribes. Tik-Tik expresses his desire to pursue them, prompting Nakudu to instruct his men to prepare for departure. Upon bidding farewell to their loved ones, Blay observes that Nakudu is without his family. Nakudu reveals that the riders murdered his wife and abducted his son Tudu. Meanwhile, Tudu befriends Baku while they are being held captive by the riders. During a rest stop, One Eye attempts to force Baku to drink water, but Baku retaliates by attacking him. Without delay, One Eye lunges at Baku with lethal intent, prompting Evelette to implore the warlord to intervene. Compelled by Evelette's request, the warlord strikes One Eye to halt his attack. This action infuriates One Eye, who almost draws his sword in retaliation. Nonetheless, he recognizes that harming the leader at that moment would be unwise and instead vows to seek retribution later. Meanwhile, Blade departs from his village with his companions and is astounded to discover that numerous other tribes have gathered to meet them, having learned of the arrival of their esteemed leader. Undeterred by exhaustion, the group embarks on a grueling journey without respite or repose. With each passing day, their numbers swell as more tribes join their ranks. Ultimately, they reach the river and witness the riders departing on boats laden with captive slaves. Overcome with emotion, Blay cries out Evelette's name, and upon hearing his voice, Evelette assures her fellow captives that Blay will rescue them. The children are thrilled to witness the vast multitude of warriors, but their elation is swiftly quelled by the riders' reprimand. As they cannot pursue the boats, the tribes halt to deliberate on their next course of action. According to legend, the river winds through the sand like a serpentine creature, leading to a destination known as the Eye of the Snake, where the captives are taken and held under the stationary sun and moon. The sole alternative to traveling by boat is traversing the arid desert, an undertaking deemed too arduous for anyone to endure. Despite the seemingly insurmountable odds, Blay remains steadfast in his determination to locate the Eye of the Snake. Leading the tribes through the unforgiving desert terrain, they trek for several days and begin to feel as though they are wandering aimlessly. However, Blay eventually discerns that the Eye of the Snake refers to the North Star, which they can utilize as a navigational aid during their nocturnal travels. Meanwhile, the old mother becomes increasingly withdrawn, refusing to communicate with anyone and instead choosing to remain stationary, awaiting the opportune moment to complete her sacred mission. After an arduous journey, the tribes at last arrive at the destination of the riders, a location called the Mountain of the Gods. The slaves had already been transported there several days prior, and have since been subjected to constructing a pyramid for a highly advanced civilization. Not only have the captives been subjected to this backbreaking labor, but the captors have also mistreated mammoths, sparking the ire of Baku and Karan. Upon hearing the sound of a horn, all individuals must kneel in submission to the leader referred to as the Almighty and his entourage of priests. Presently, the Almighty grows displeased with the sluggish pace of the work being done, and thus orders the priests to make an example out of a slave as punishment. Sadly, one of Karan's companions is selected and thrown off the top of the structure, perishing immediately. At the same time, Blay's morale begins to falter, as he realizes that even with all the tribes united, their numbers are still insufficient to launch an attack. However, Tik-Tik proposes that if they can rally the slaves to their cause, their forces will become much more formidable. As darkness descends, Blay and Nakudu surreptitiously enter the enclosed structure to inspect the enslaved individuals. Nakudu is reunited with his son while Blay questions Baku about Evelette's whereabouts, only to discover that she is held in a separate edifice. Blay expresses remorse to Karan for his capture, but Karan remains steadfast in his faith in the prophecy and pledges to follow Blay to the end. A captive from a different clan objects to Blay's presence, warning that he will jeopardize everyone and that his possession of weapons is insignificant since they cannot slay a deity. Nakudu reveals to the slaves that Blay possesses the ability to communicate with tigers. This information prompts the slaves to introduce Blay to a visually impaired man who is concealed underground. The man previously served a god who fled, and he discloses that the god's greatest fear is the mark of the hunter, which corresponds to the most brilliant star in the sky. If Blay lacks this mark, he will be unable to vanquish the supreme being. As the guards draw near, Blay and Nakudu must make a hasty departure. However, before leaving, Blay inquires about the blind man's bracelet, recognizing it from somewhere. The blind man discloses that Blay's deceased father had saved his life in the past. After this revelation, Blay and Nakudu hasten back to their army, but are trailed by several guards. Although the tribesmen prepare for combat, Tik-Tik arrives and battles the guards alone. Utilizing his impressive prowess, Tik-Tik dispatches all of the guards. However, one of them feigns death and backstabs Tik-Tik when he is not looking. Dlé hurries to Tik-Tik's aid, emphasizing his importance in rallying the slaves to their cause since they adhere to their own prophecy. Tik-Tik reassures Dlé that prophecies are multifaceted and entrusts him with the white spear before passing away. Meanwhile, Warlord seizes Evelette and brings her to his quarters to exploit her tonight. Evelette manages to filch Warlord's sword, but her attempt to protect herself is thwarted by the sudden arrival of the priests and guards. They apprehend Warlord for abducting a slave belonging to the Supreme Being, an act that One Eye has revealed as an act of retribution. The priests confiscate the sword from Evelette's grasp and notice the scars that correspond to the mark of the hunter. They relay this information to the Almighty, who becomes incensed upon hearing it. Returning to Dlé, he inters Tik-Tik and receives encouragement from Nakudu to lead as his father would have wished. Dlé finally embraces the responsibility that comes with the white spear and delivers a rousing speech to the tribes about their collective efforts in slaying giants, just as they unite to hunt mammoths. With a plan in place, they prepare for the next day. They bury their spears in the sand and disguise themselves as slaves to infiltrate the enemy camp. Dlé designates Baku as a hunter for the day. Dlé also spreads the word of an impending battle to his fellow tribesmen. Meanwhile, Evelette and Warlord are brought before the Almighty. The Warlord is punished with lashes for his treachery, and the priests warn the Almighty of the approach of a massive army of spear warriors, urging him to prepare for the fight. Back with the slaves, Dlé and Karin locate the leader of the mammoths, assigning Baku and Turu to assist in the attack. The children release the mammoths from their restraints, and then Dlé signals for the battle to commence. While the spears start attacking their captors, Dlé attempts to intimidate the mammoth leader, but his efforts prove unsuccessful. At that instant, the guards arrive, and Karin engages in combat with them in order to give Dlé a chance to escape, ultimately sacrificing himself for the well-being of his people. Filled with anger and grief over the loss of his comrade, Dlé raises his voice in a powerful roar, frightening the mammoth and prompting it to charge down the hill, crushing the guards in its path. Witnessing this display of defiance, the slaves are finally emboldened to join the rebellion, and soon the tribespeople are engaged in fierce battles with their oppressors. Upon learning of the uprising, Almighty commands the priests to publicly execute Evelette, with the intention of crushing the rebel spirits. Upon catching sight of Evelette, Dlé orders his warriors to cease fighting, and the slaves are moved to kneel upon hearing the sound of the horn. Almighty arrives and issues a warning through his priest, threatening to harm Evelette if Dlé does not retreat. Dlé agrees to withdraw only if he is permitted to bring his own people along, and Almighty consents to allow his tribe to depart, but not the others, as they are considered God's property. Rejecting the conditions imposed upon him, Dlé hurls his white spear with deadly precision, slaying Almighty in an instant, as he declares to all present that the supposed deity was merely a mortal. Stirred by this revelation, the slaves eagerly rejoin the fray. Baku spots One Eye and attempts to exact revenge upon him for his mother's fate, but his efforts prove futile, and One Eye manages to seize Turu. This proves to be a costly misjudgment as Nakudu swiftly dispatches One Eye in order to save his son. Meanwhile, as the slaves storm the main building, toppling the priests and setting the boats ablaze, Warlord frees Evelette and flees with her on horseback. Dlé gives chase, and when Evelette spots him, she snatches an arrow and stabs Warlord, causing both of them to tumble from the horse. As Evelette and Dlé rush towards one another, Warlord seizes his bow and strikes Evelette, causing the old mother to suffer a grievous wound. Fueled by rage, Dlé charges towards Warlord and dispatches him with his white spear. Amidst the jubilation of those around him, Dlé's eyes remain heavy with sorrow as he cradles Evelette's lifeless body. Overcome with grief, he staggers towards the mammoths, imploring them to end his suffering mercifully. However, at that very moment, the old mother draws her final breath, and Evelette miraculously returns to life. Dlé rushes to embrace his beloved, prompting the tribesmen to erupt in celebration once again, this time with genuine joy. In due course, the various tribes depart for their respective villages. Before parting ways, Nakudu offers Dlé a handful of seeds collected by his father, which will serve to sustain his people. The two tribes bid each other a final farewell, knowing that they will likely never cross paths again. Several days later, Dlé and his rescued tribesmen arrive back at their own tribe, where they plant the seeds gifted by Nakudu. Much to their surprise, the seeds sprout and grow at an astonishing pace. With Dlé at the helm and an abundance of food to sustain them, the prophecy of the old mother has finally come to fruition.